all of these big dick deviants is all catching hell in 2024. It's up for all of them. It don't matter if you Diddy or whoever you is. All lies will be exposed. That's all.
Tell me when I'm telling lies.
Last week, the whole world was talking about the diddler and his baby oil. But this week, at least on my side of the internet, we're all talking about the old man who doesn't fall too far from the freaky tree himself.
But let me tell you this. I am no pervert.
Because Netflix just released a 6-part documentary about the life, career, and many controversies of the former chairman / owner of the WWE, Vince McMahon. The same man who infamously had to resign due to disturbing allegations of earlier this year, and who, last that I checked, is still currently under federal investigation. But I gotta be real with you, I'm shocked that this was even able to see the light of day. TKO and WWE have desperately been trying to wash their hands of anything Vince McMahon for months now. You would also think that Netflix, after just signing a $5 billion deal to get the exclusive streaming rights of Monday Night Raw, would want nothing to do with this documentary either, right? That just seems like a conflict of interest to me. Maybe it's just me. Fortunately, we live in a timeline where we get to see the finished product, and Vince McMahon was powerless to do anything to stop it. He tried though, but it didn't work. He was just a hit dog hollering and crying, and that just made me want to see it even more. But with all that out of the way, I will have you know that I finally finished all 6 hours of the Mr. McMahon documentary, and boy, do we have a lot to get into. This may or may not be a hot take, but I thought that this doc was absolutely incredible. I know they were only able to do most of the interviews with Vince and the who's who of WWE talent, legends, and execs before the allegations started coming out, but they were still able to get over 100 hours filmed back in 2021, and then they were able to include a lot of outside talking heads like Dave Meltzer, David Shoemaker, Phil Mushnick, Sharon Mazer, to give a lot of context and help do some fact checking along the way. I wasn't sure how much ground they were going to be able to cover within 6 hours, but they didn't really miss anything. The first episode begins with Vince's childhood, how he would eventually take over the company from his father and dismantle the territories, the rise of Hulk Hogan, and the gamble that he took with creating WrestleMania. The second episode details the WWE's boom period in the 80s with The Rock and wrestling and all of the scandals that led up to the steroid trial. The third episode is about the emergence of WCW as a true competitor to the WWE and the Montreal Screwjob. Episode 4 follows up with showing us the inception of the Mr. McMahon character, the launch of arguably their most popular time period in the Attitude Era, its many controversies, and the tragic death of Owen Hart. Episode 5 spotlights the failure of the XFL, when his family started getting involved in the business, and his very complicated relationships with all of them. And then the final episode tried to speedrun everything from the Crispin all the way up to the present day allegations that led to his ouster from the company. But considering no one knew how the past 2 years would play out, I think they did a pretty good job showing us the highs, the lows, the good, the bad, the ugly. And even though I would say I'm pretty well versed in the lore of Vince McMahon and the WWE, there were still a lot of moments that had me do a few double takes. Do you know how many times I had to pause and rewind to make sure that I heard something correctly? I see why Vince never wanted to do a documentary like this before. Dude is constantly self-snitching and incriminating himself. Whenever he was asked about Rita Chatterton, the company's first ever female referee who accused him of rape back in '86, this is what Vince said. Once you're accused of you're, but it was consensual, and actually had it been, the statute of limitations had run out. What? When he was asked about Sable's sexual harassment lawsuit from back in 1999, it's a blur, I don't remember, but all I know is she came back to work. And he would also kind of address the trauma and abuse that he suffered as a child, which I was aware of, but again, this is the first time I've seen him do anything like this on camera. And And after hearing him talk about it, it makes you realize why Vince is the way that he is. And with the sexual deviance and also his very ruthless nature. It explains why he said he feels like he has 3 computers going off in his head at the time, and with one of them mainly thinking something that's a lot of fun and it's about sex. It explains why he pitched an incest storyline with his daughter Stephanie, why he's so damn hard on his son Shane, why he's so cutthroat and predatory when it comes to his business, why he would put the business over his family and all other forms of morality. There is no better example of this than his decision that the show must go on after Owen Hart died in the ring. As a fan who was too young to remember when all this happened, after never seeing the footage of the wrestlers obviously mourning but still being made to perform and carry on, to see Vince trying to coldly justify his actions was honestly appalling. And in one of the most glaringly ironic scenes in the entire documentary, Vince acknowledges that he knows from a psychological standpoint, whenever you're abused as a child, there is a potential that you can become an abuser yourself. But he said he didn't subscribe to that it's a cop-out. But my brother, your actions don't align with your words. I guess that's what made this all so interesting to me. Seeing Vince take an opportunity, probably for one of the first times in his life, and do some self-reflection. Us being able to see that without him having the authority to change the narrative or edit things out. Long term, I'm wondering what the overall reception of this documentary is gonna be. Now, I haven't seen that many reviews, but from the ones that I was able to see and the here and there on wrestling threads and Twitter, I know that there's some wrestling fans out there that were disappointed. From what I was able to gather, most of the criticism came to the fact of that there wasn't that much new information presented. I did see someone say I could have Googled that shit. And yeah, I can say as a lifelong fan that I knew most of what they were talking about, or at least had a little bit of awareness going into it. But I'm also a fan that catches every episode of Dark Side of the Ring. I regularly binge watch classic content and documentaries. I'm subscribed to so many different wrestling YouTube channels. I follow Fightful and Wrestling Observer. I guarantee you that those are the same type of fans that have been complaining that this doc was a waste of time. And if that applies to you, that means you and me are on the choir, and this documentary was preaching to us.
Blessed be the name of Vincent Kennedy McMahon.
Funny enough, Bill Simmons said that he expected to get this same criticism from the diehard wrestling fans before the doc even released. Simmons and Smith wanted to tell a story that would appeal to everybody and not just the people already in the wrestling bubble. They wanted to tell a story about a man that created this larger-than-life phenomenon that influenced American pop culture and who he is as a person, not just in front of the camera, but behind the camera. His struggles, his motivations, his demons, and how we got to where we are today. Like I said, I know I wasn't their target demographic because I'm already a part of the choir here, but I still got a hell of a lot out of Mr. McMahon. And there were still a few hidden gems that I hadn't heard of before or had never seen. For instance, I didn't know Gorilla Monsoon was the OG heir apparent to get Vince's seniors WWF, or Heyman's story about the insane argument between Shane and Vince over something in creative, and Vince daring Shane to stab him if he ever wanted to get his ideas through or eventually take over the company. Actually getting some extensive footage and time spent on the Ring Boy scandal. Hey yo, shout out to Tony Atlas, man. You can tell he was one of the only wrestlers that did not give a fuck. Well, was scared of Vince, gave us the straight real information, and just told us how it was and how he felt. But that shit about Pat Patterson trying to grab his pecker back in the day was insane. Especially after listening to the producers get befuddled on why he couldn't go complain to Vince about it at the time. Highlight of the entire doc, hands down. As far as other criticism, I'm thinking it's probably because of the direction that the producers chose for this. But keep in mind, the entire reason that this project even exists is because Vince wanted to tell his life story. But a year and a half into production, all this crazy shit starts going down, and Vince gets himself into some real hot water. That put the filmmakers in a very awkward position. Do you pivot to only covering the recent scandals and potentially delay the project further? Or do you try to tell the story that you were originally going for and find a way to fill in the details that have happened over the past 2 years? They decided to go with the latter, and for what it's worth, I think they did a great job with the cards that they were dealt. I know most of my social media is filled with other wrestling fans and content creators, and from what I've seen, it's been mixed, but I wonder how the non-wrestling folks or the more casual fans are gonna feel about this. If it's anything like how the Kevin on Stage review was, I think this is gonna be a hit and a successful way to bring to light all the shit that Vince has tried to hide for so many years. But time will tell. I think that's been enough for me today. Now I wanna hear what you all think. Did you love or did you hate the Mr. McMahon documentary on Netflix? What was your favorite part? What were your criticisms or biggest takeaways? Don't be shy. I know you have a lot to say. Go ahead and comment your heart away. I'll be ready, willing, and able to discuss it all with you. If you're still on the fence, give it a shot. Whether you're a wrestling fan, used to be a wrestling fan, related to a wrestling fan, romantically involved with a wrestling fan, or if you have no idea about wrestling stuff at all, and you just want the next Tiger King or Chimp Crazy to binge watch and make a TikTok about. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another episode of EK Wrestling. My name is Brandon. I love you all and I appreciate the support as always. And for my wrestling fans, if you're like me and over the past 2 years you've had difficulty reconciling with, this thing that we have loved and cherished for so many years, but one of the driving forces behind it being an evil, deplorable piece of shit. Despite all that Vince has done for wrestling, wrestling was here before him, and it will carry on without him. Until next time, take care, guys.